He's been gone for 3 days. Hunting, moving through tall grass, tracking something that keeps disappearing over the next hill. No shelter, no fire at night. Just the sound of the savanna and the weight of a spear in his hand. Now he's walking back to camp, meat on his shoulder, the sun is low. And then he sees it. Another man stepping out of his shelter. He stops. The world doesn't change around him. The sky is the same. The grass is the same. The fire is still burning somewhere behind the trees. But something in him goes completely still. Not grief, not confusion, something older than both of those. What happened next? In that moment, 70,000 years ago, it wasn't a conversation, wasn't a difficult talk, wasn't a breakup. There were no courts, no lawyers, no system to appeal to. There was only what the tribe decided. And the tribe had very clear ideas about what happened next. Here's what nobody tells you about cheating in the ancient world. It had nothing to do with morality. Not love, not loyalty, not what was right or wrong. Pure survival math. In a tribe of 30 people, every single resource is accounted for. Every meal, every act of protection, every year of care invested in a child. A man raising another man's child isn't just betrayed emotionally. He is redirecting years of hunts, years of food, years of protection into a genetic line that isn't his. In a world with no margin for error, that's not a personal tragedy. That's a catastrophic miscalculation. And evolution does not forgive miscalculations. So over millions of years, it built a response. Not a rule, not a law. A program wired directly into the hardware of the human brain. Fast, automatic, and for most of human history, extremely dangerous to trigger. Picture what daily life actually looked like. A tribe of 25 to 50 people. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar spent decades studying human group sizes. We evolved for communities of roughly 150 people maximum. In a group of 30, there are no secrets. There are no walls, no separate rooms, no private spaces. Everyone sleeps around the same fire. Everyone sees where you went. Everyone notices who came back late, who was missing, whose eyes don't meet whose. Privacy is an invention of civilization. In the savannah, it simply did not exist, which meant that infidelity wasn't just risky. It was almost impossible to hide for long. And the stakes of being discovered were not abstract. Before DNA tests, before any science of genetics, a man had exactly two tools: control and observation. Research suggests that roughly 1 to 3% of children are not biologically related to their presumed father. In a tribe where one man dedicates years of hunting, even a small probability is a biological disaster. A hunter spends 6 to 8 hours a day providing for his family. Raising a child to full independence takes 12 to 15 years. That is an enormous accumulation of effort, calories, protection, teaching. Direct all of that toward another man's genetic line, and in evolutionary terms, you have simply ceased to exist. Nature counts. Nature does not care about intentions. In a small group, reputation is currency. A man who was betrayed and did not respond, visibly, publicly, lost status immediately. And in that world, lower status meant less food, fewer allies, fewer future options. Responding with force wasn't simply about emotion. It was about maintaining your position in the only survival structure that existed. So what actually happened? Anthropologist Napoleon Chagnon spent decades living with the yanomami, a tribal people of Venezuela and Brazil whose way of life remained largely unchanged for thousands of years. What he documented was uncomfortable and it was precise. The leading cause of male violence in the tribe was reproductive competition. Disputes over women, suspected infidelity, questions of paternity. Approximately 30% of Yanomami men died by violence. The majority of those deaths were connected, directly or indirectly, to sexual jealousy. This wasn't unique to one group. The pattern appears across tribal societies studied on every continent. Where there are small groups, scarce resources, and no external legal system, the enforcement of sexual boundaries falls to the group itself. And the group enforces them with finality. Researchers studying the hadza of Tanzania, one of the most isolated hunter-gatherer communities, found that infidelity carried immediate, severe social consequences. A man discovered cheating lost status in the group. And in a world where the group is the only safety net, losing status is not an inconvenience. It is the beginning of a slow removal from everything that keeps you alive. For women, the consequences were different, but no less severe. Being cast out of the tribe was not a metaphor for loneliness. One night alone in the savannah, without fire, without the group, without protection, meant real exposure to predators, to cold, to starvation. The tribe was not a social unit, it was a survival apparatus. And being removed from it, even temporarily, could end everything. The rules were brutal because the environment was brutal. Morality had nothing to do with it. The math was simple. Here is what makes this stranger still. Evolution didn't just build social consequences into the world around cheating. It built biological defenses directly into the body. In men whose partners had spent time around other men, the volume of sperm produced increases significantly. Not consciously, not as a decision. Automatically. The body running its own quiet war without asking permission. This has been documented in dozens of primate species and in humans. The biology does not wait for emotional processing to catch up. Brain imaging studies reveal something equally striking. Jealousy activates the same neural regions as physical pain, and the same regions that fire in response to genuine threats to survival. This is not a malfunction. For the ancient brain, losing a partner was a survival threat. Loss of resources, loss of protection, loss of status in the group. The brain responds proportionally to the threat it remembers from a million years of experience. Evolutionary psychologists David Buss and Todd Shackelford identified a consistent pattern across cultures. Men respond more intensely to sexual infidelity, women to emotional infidelity. A man's primary biological risk is investing resources in a child that isn't his. A woman's primary risk is losing the partner's resources and protection permanently. Different threats, different triggers, one ancient program underneath them all. And then there is one more piece that fits the puzzle perfectly. Unlike nearly every other primate, human females show no visible signs of ovulation. No physical signal, no obvious moment. Some evolutionary biologists argue this is a protective adaptation. If a man cannot know when conception is possible, he is compelled to stay close continuously. Constant presence equals constant protection and resources. Biology negotiated that arrangement with itself without a single word ever being spoken. Tinder has existed for 12 years, divorce law in some form for a few centuries. The jealousy and retaliation circuitry in the human brain, roughly 2 million years. Somewhere between 20 and 30% of homicides in modern societies are linked to sexual jealousy. Not because modern people are primitive, because the ancient brain never received a notification that the rules had changed. Courts replaced personal revenge. Divorce replaced exile. Therapy replaced the tribal council. But when the emotion arrives, it arrives with the same intensity it carried 70,000 years ago. Because the body cannot tell the difference between a legal dispute and a survival crisis. It only knows what it was built to know. There is a stranger dimension to this. Psychologist David Buss surveyed men and women across cultures around the world. He asked them to describe the thoughts they had in response to a partner's infidelity. The results were consistent across countries, religions, and education levels. The thoughts were violent, not actions, thoughts. Dark, specific, involuntary thoughts that appeared before any conscious decision-making could intervene. Buss's conclusion was not that humans are dangerous. It was that this reaction is not a personality flaw. It is not a cultural artifact. It is firmware. Standard equipment, installed over millions of years for very specific reasons. We have built systems to intercept the impulse, and most of the time they work. But the impulse is still there, waiting. He's still standing at the edge of the camp, spear in his hand, the other man somewhere behind him now. The fire burning low. What he felt in that moment, you know it. Not the spear, not the specific scene, but the wave itself. That sudden, total, full-body stillness before everything shifts. You have felt some version of that, maybe quieter, maybe managed, but the same circuit fired. The rules have changed. The consequences have changed. The world around that feeling has changed completely. But the feeling itself came from the same place, built by the same process, calibrated against the same ancient stakes. We'd like to think we are far from that man in the grass. We have language and courts and psychology and entire libraries of books about relationships. All of that is true. And underneath all of it, deeper than the language, deeper than the reasoning, something very old is still running its calculations. It doesn't know what year it is. It only knows what it was built to protect. And it never stopped.